before we begin. There we go. In this video, I'm going to show you a bunch of different ways that motion capture can feed directly into Unreal Engine and drive our characters in real time. Some of these methods are going to require expensive sensors or cameras, but others work with just a webcam, and some don't even need that. But I figured that if you don't work at a games or visual effects studio that uses mocap professionally, and if you didn't go to a really well-funded school, most animators are really never exposed to this kind of stuff. So I'm bringing the studio to you. And shout out to my NVIDIA GeForce RTX 5090, the GPU in my machine. I'm putting it to work today. And a huge thank you to NVIDIA Studio for sponsoring this video. Also, you'll notice a bit of a delay here between the whole facial capture thing. That's just because I'm recording on this camera and I have it routing through like recording hardware stuff before it actually makes it to the computer. Now I'm gonna turn him off so he's not distracting. Now characters have a lot of controls, so let's start small and simple. To move just a camera, all we need to deal with is translation and rotation, and the quickest way we can capture camera motion is with vcam. It's a free app from Epic Games and it works on both iOS and Android. It's super easy to connect to the editor, and now you can not only move around your 3D scene, but you can also record camera data directly into your 3D project. This is one of the simplest forms of motion capture, and literally anyone can do it. It's cool because if you have animation data in Maya or Blender or another software, you can either record your camera data in Unreal and send it back to those tools, or you could just bring your animation into Unreal, do your camera there, and then render it in Unreal as well. It makes playing with motion capture technology as a whole really accessible because pretty much everybody can do this. And by the way, the setup for a lot of what you're about to see in this video is the same. You need to make sure whatever relevant plugins are enabled, whether it's the vcam plugins or metahuman animator or the motion capture solution of your choice. Xsens, Rokoko, Vicon, OptiTrack, all these different tools have their own plugin to interface with their software. Once you've turned those on, you just go to Edit, Project Settings, and then all the way down under UDP Messaging, you'll use this little drop down to select your computer's IP address. It's probably not the one starting with 192 or maybe 127, whatever the most complicated looking one is, it's probably that. And don't show this number to anybody. Online Safety and Privacy 101. You want to keep this number a secret. But once that's done, to use vcam, all you need to do is add the vcam camera actor to the scene and uncheck the little enable box if you don't want it to take over your viewport. This makes it a lot easier to keep working, and then reposition the starting location for the camera, and you'll just re-enable this when you're ready to go. So your phone and your computer need to be on the same Wi-Fi network. I've also used a phone hotspot back when I was doing a live demo at Lightbox last year. Works fine. But the IP address that you should use will be found easily under the pixel streaming menu as long as you already have the vcam actor in the scene. And that's it. You have all your camera settings in the app, and you have a button to record whatever you do with your phone straight into Unreal Engine. Like I said, fairly simple. So let's see what else we can capture and send to Unreal. This is a fun section. A lot of people actually haven't used these features yet. Another free app you're gonna wanna grab for this is LiveLink Face. This lets us use metahuman animator, which I've shown in some previous videos. You can record your performances and then process the recordings into really nice facial capture data on your computer. But what I haven't shown you yet is the real-time mode. It does support ARKit, which is kind of like basic phone quality. It's the same face tracking that we have in app filters like TikTok, Instagram, all the way back at Snapchat. All the processing for this is done on your phone, and it just kind of sends basic facial information to Unreal. It's really not that good in terms of facial animation quality, but it's really widely supported and pretty much every phone can do it, so it is nice to have. But like I said, it's pretty limited. It's got 52 specific blend shapes that it's looking at, and anything else it can't really support. But there's also a higher quality mode, the metahuman animator setting. It's not as high fidelity to do it live as it is to do it through the recorded method, but it's way stronger than ARKit, which doesn't really track your face as a whole. This option lets you do things like single eyebrow raises, aggressive mouth corner pulls, and upper lip sneers. It can handle facial asymmetry and like different things you can do with your face way better than ARKit. And what's cool is you don't even need to use your phone for this process. We can go straight into LiveLink and add a metahuman animator video source right here in Unreal. I've showed that this works in past videos with audio files too, and you can even just use your microphone to get kind of the lower half of the face, just processing whatever you say.
I demand a trial by combat.
But we're gonna stick to video today. And you can use whatever camera you have connected, even a cheap webcam. Just make sure that your lighting is decent, and if you have to choose between high resolution and high frame rate, prioritize the frame rate. The real-time solve gets way more information from the number of frames that you're giving it than a really fancy image, which is another reason why you don't need to worry about having a really fancy camera for this. This facial animation calculation happens on your computer's graphics card, so you'll probably notice a bit of a performance hit if you're rendering like a whole metahuman on the same machine, for example, with hair and everything else. But professionally, if you were doing this for work and you're doing things live and you needed it to be perfect and super smooth, what often happens is that the facial animation capture will get sent to one computer and then the rendering will happen on another machine, with that facial solve kind of just getting sent between Unreal sessions. We'll talk about that later, but we don't need to worry about that today because again, RTX 5090. And speaking of, the speed of your GPU and the amount of VRAM you have in it makes a significant difference when it comes to actually creating metahumans from scratch inside of Unreal. I did a big virtual production project last year, and a lot of the artists I was supervising would create their metahumans, but they'd have to check them into the system, and I'd assemble them on my machine because their laptops were not built for 3D work whatsoever. And their machines just couldn't handle that process. They would either crash when they tried to build a metahuman, or it would just take so long that I would just do it and then check it back into the project and push the finished character into their projects. So your GPU does make a pretty big difference for this process. Now for the body. Probably the most well-documented section when it comes to motion capture. But rather than recording various takes and then blending them, cleaning them up, going through an actual animation workflow process, we're just gonna live stream the data for today's example. Right now, I'm in an xsens suit, and there's technically 3 ways to drive an Unreal skeleton using motion capture data. I can stream the data live, just from wearing the suit and having it pass through that software. I can record a take, then let it reprocess, which is sort of their secret sauce to cleaning up foot sliding, jitter, any weird issues like that. And then you can, of course, export it for that whole workflow, or we can just let that reprocess happen and then hit play and allow the playback of that recording to live stream directly into Unreal without ever having to export anything. And let me know if you're interested in a whole mocap animation cleanup video. I've been doing a lot of that lately and I've got some good tricks. Most of it I've been doing directly in Unreal Engine. But with motion capture body animation, all we're really doing is sending basic transformation and rotation data to a skeleton in Unreal. It doesn't go to the character, it just goes to a skeleton within it. And that's why this process can happen in real time. Like how a game can render at a 60, 120, or 240 plus frames per second, all the actual mesh data, the shader, textures, math, all that stuff, the character deformation calculations, all of that's done on the GPU. Just like cloth, hair, and ragdoll physics. We can simulate cloth in real time on our GPU in Unreal as well, with weight, paint, and maps determining how fully we're committing that mesh to its simulation data. Black means a value of 0, or don't move at all, stay as you are, and white represents a value of 1, for full simulation, go. And then hair groom assets have a bunch of hidden settings like springiness and dampening, a bunch of physics settings to adjust how far from the original look you're allowed to get with things like gravity and momentum. But nothing says gravity like ragdoll physics. There's some really fun tricks that we can do with physics, but that's a whole nother video topic, and I'm actually working on that one. It'll be a collaboration video between my channel and the NVIDIA Studio YouTube channel when I'm done, so I'll link that below once it's finished and posted. But like I just said, all of what I just showed you works in real time with our motion capture sources. Finally, we're on to hands. This is a section that I have a lot to say when it comes to animation cleanup. For example, the pose library really comes in handy when you're actually doing cleanup of the hands and making the hands actually look good, instead of a lot of times motion capture data for hands can look a little funky with some weird looking poses. So if you're interested in making that process smoother, easier, and just overall looking a lot better, check out the link below to my animation and Unreal classes. But luckily, hand animation is usually something you can push directly into the body skeleton for whatever hardware you happen to be using. Manus gloves work directly in the xsens software. Rokoko has their own smart gloves that connect automatically to their suit, and then they have the coil that improves the quality of their hand data. Gloves are kind of a whole rabbit hole. For example, there's another one called xsens. These gloves have more of a sensor membrane, and depending on which glove you happen to use, sometimes you can stream them directly into Unreal Engine. Other times you can just link them to, for example, xsens MVN software. You can sort of link any streaming gloves directly into their body skeleton. Ultimately, hands are pretty much the same process as body capture, except that most suits don't have fingers. So you have to seek out a glove solution on your own and add that into the mix. And the same goes for props. You can stick a sword to the hand, but it's not gonna be very realistic if you don't have some kind of offset between the hand and whatever's being held. If you just link these two together, the fingers don't have any effect on the actual object, and it's gonna feel really unnatural. You wanna be able to have a difference in rotation between the object that's being held and the hand itself, rather than having them just like locked together. It feels really weird if that's the case. For something like this, you'll need an extra sensor. For example, xsens has an additional sensor that you can split from the hand to a prop tracker as well. And it's really helpful for anything that you're holding, although it can't get that far away from the suit due to the cable length. You can have them for both arms, but ultimately it's less about tracking the prop as a whole and mostly helping you with like held weapons or objects or anything that's sort of linked to one specific hand at a time. If you want full prop tracking, you're looking at an optical system like vcam or OptiTrack. Instead of having sensors embedded in a suit, these systems use infrared cameras to watch little tracking markers, little reflective dots that you can put on literally anything. Weapons, chairs, musical instruments. This is the fancy stuff and allows you to track objects independent of whatever actors happen to be in the volume. Now, sometimes all you need is to pilot a character live, and that's fine. But in most cases, you probably want to actually capture those performances and do something with that data. This is where normally we turn to Take Recorder. It's a window in Unreal that we can drop our character into and just hit record to capture whatever data is being live streamed in. But there is a new tool that's even better for this when we're using motion capture. It's called the Mocap Manager. There's a few buttons to click for setup, but this will make it a lot easier to select which characters and sources you want to record, and there's even a built-in section with helpful review tools so that you can make notes on which takes you like the best. This is really good for when you have a long list of actions that you need to capture, make sure you don't miss anything, and you want to note which takes were actually the good ones to use if you had to try them a couple of times. In a professional production environment, a lot of these motion capture systems come in with a bunch of different actors, so that you've got multiple suits, multiple hands, multiple faces, and you would assemble all this on one computer using LiveLink Hub. It's sort of a standalone piece of Unreal that just allows you to ingest all this data and organize it. You can create what's called virtual sources, which is where you can assign this body, this face, these hands to sort of one person and say, that's actor one, and so on. And then you can send that data to whatever other instances of Unreal exist, to other computers, to other people. It's kind of on the newer side, so if you haven't seen this, I figured it's good to know it's a thing. When I'm teaching Unreal classes, I usually have 2 or 3 different project files open at a time in Unreal, so different Unreal sessions, and the motion capture system only wants to send data to one copy of Unreal at a time. Whichever was the first one to open is the one that it'll grab. So I find it's easier to send the data to LiveLink, and then from there, LiveLink can send the data out to other copies of Unreal, and I can control that a little bit easier. And again, I have to shout out my graphics card because the reason I can have 2 or 3 full Unreal projects open at any given time when I'm teaching, along with everything else, because my classes are always recorded and I've got other softwares open, the motion capture stuff, Maya, Blender. There's always a lot going on my computer. But a big part of that is thanks to the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 5090 that I have in my system. It helps with the teaching I do and my freelance projects. I've even delivered work on a few rigging and animation gigs from Unreal Engine on this machine. I remember always looking at different animation roles at different companies and wondering how motion capture technology worked, what's the process like, how do you kind of get started with it and deal with real-time technology, because that's always a big talking point. And so if you're in the same boat, hopefully this was interesting to you. And now that you know some of what exists, if you have any specific questions, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know what else you're curious about. And if you want to learn more about motion capture, whether it's the real-time streaming side of it or the actual cleanup and animation workflows, be sure to check the link in my description for my Unreal and animation classes. I'm about to announce some new stuff, so make sure you're on the wait list. And a huge thank you to NVIDIA Studio for sponsoring this video. The reason I'm able to do so much in Unreal so regularly and so easily is because I have a great GPU in my system. I've done a couple videos on it if you're curious about performance in 3D applications. And hopefully now you also know some of the key areas where having a powerful GPU in your machine makes a difference in these types of Unreal workflows. Sometimes it's kind of hard to know which features of your software is actually using certain parts of your computer hardware. But as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something new. I'm Sir Wade, and I'll see you in the next video.